DZRJ and RJTV. My name is Eric Lecain, here talking about interesting stories going on around the world this week. And I am joined with our super special guest, 𝗡𝗲𝘄𝘀. She is back. How are you, 𝗡𝗲𝘄𝘀?
Pretty good, Eric. I miss DZRJ.
Yes.
I miss our chit-chat over here.
Our chit-chat here on DZRJ on the World News Jam here. Always talking about what we think are the most interesting stories going on in the world this week. And this week, 𝗡𝗲𝘄𝘀, there's a lot of interesting stuff. Now, what is going on today? How are we doing today? Are we okay? Are we good? I think we're okay now.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Seems like we're okay. But you know what might not be okay, 𝗡𝗲𝘄𝘀, is Mawar. It's a
Mawars.
tropical storm that is
It's the
working its
typhoon.
way to the Philippines, off the coast of Mindanao. They're saying it could end up a tropical depression, or it could be a super typhoon. Sustained winds of 65 kilometers per hour, and it will have the local name of Betty.
Betty, yeah. Well, when it comes to the, Philippines will always give, maybe a Filipino name or maybe a foreign-sounding name as well.
Not sure, but we'll be talking about Betty as she comes closer down our road and gets closer to our door. They're also predicting, I'm not sure what he's asking.
Commercial because of your sound.
Well, I guess we'll go into a commercial. Are we going to do a commercial? Seems like we just got started, but I guess we could do a commercial.
Double R is now at Radio Bandido, an informative program that tackles all issues concerning all walks of life, delivering hottest issues and events, with health consultations on air and a lot more, with your host veteran newsman Ricky Sunga and master entrepreneur Ruel So. Double R sa Radio Bandido every Saturday from 10 to 11 a.m. You can catch Double R on DZRJ 8:10 a.m., Radio Bandido TV channel 224, TV Plus boxes, and streaming live on Facebook/DZRJ 8:10 a.m. and YouTube channel DZRJ 8:10 a.m. Radio Bandido. 𝗡𝗲𝘄𝘀 Baby is a news-oriented program that tackles topical issues and headlines with the support of DZRJ field reporters. Hosted by the legendary Jimmy Morato, Monday to Friday from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. on Radio Bandido TV, channel 224 Sky Cable, TV Plus boxes, digital free-to-air channel 29, DZRJ 8:10 a.m., Facebook.com/DZRJ 8:10 a.m., and on YouTube channel DZRJ 8:10 a.m. Radio Bandido.
Everybody good? On the World News Jam on DZRJ. My name is Eric Lecain, and I'm with 𝗡𝗲𝘄𝘀, who's now back on the show here to help us out. I think we're good now. But before we went to the commercial there, they're predicting El Nino, which is the effect of warming the ocean here in the second half of 2023. And they believe, we were talking about the, off the coast of Mindanao, the typhoon down there. They believe that it might be the worst we've ever seen.
Well, but that's why, they had a meeting. They already, kind of prepared for this because, Eric, we've been talking about climate change, right? So whatever is happening now, I think it's predictable already.
Yeah, they think, scientists around the world believe that this new, the El Nino that's going to happen in the late part of 2023, that they believe it will smash all those records that we broke in 2020, in 2021, and 2022. heat waves and prolonged hot systems and powerful storms, all this kind of stuff is coming down. Places like Indonesia and Australia are going to be hotter and drier
Yeah.
than they've ever been. Which, of course, is going to lead to possible forest fires. East Africa will have massive rains, while Southern Africa will have the exact opposite. Places like the United States, in Florida, are going to have massive storms. They believe that tornadoes are going to be, more tornadoes than we've ever had before, based on how this weather pattern is starting to look. So the other problem that they are saying that might be coming up because of this is that, the normal condition of the ocean is the way, this kind of happens every cycle where the warm water rises to the top. They say that might not happen this time, and that the waters on top will just get hotter, and then the cool waters will not rise up like they usually do, and that's going to be a problem for fish food. And that the fishes will have a tough time. It will also kill off the ocean reefs. This El Nino is supposed to happen every 2 to 7 years, and it lasts about a month, about 9 to 12 months. But what if they say it lasts for like 3 years? And this is what they are worried about. And if you go online, you see all these really cool charts that they have about how the jet stream comes down and it's going to be moved, jet stream is going to be moved lower. But it's fascinating stuff that, it happens anyway. But because of climate change and all these other issues that are going on right now, it's throwing it off. It's throwing the counterbalance off. And that may what they believe might cause much worse weather patterns than we've ever seen coming up in the next year.
Well, okay, let me ask you, Eric, about this. You've been here in the Philippines for the longest time. So, did you notice that this year, are you monitoring the weather? I mean, they've been like, in that area, in Surigao, in Mindanao, whatever, like 45, 43, there's even, even reach up to 50 degrees, my God. And you know what, I can really feel it because before, I don't even need air conditioning during daytime in my place. I just need the electric fan. I can live with it, but now I cannot. It's too hot.
Yeah.
God.
I've noticed that, in the Philippines, it's always hot. People go,
Yeah.
Winter, summertime, winter, winter. There's no summer, winter here. It's hot all the time. But there's been moments, especially down in the Visayan region, when I go down to the Visayan region, where it's like, oh my goodness, it's hot. It's like really hot. I got it. And especially when it's so hot and you turn your air conditioner on full blast and you're still hot. And you're sitting there in front of the air conditioner and sweat's coming off.
Yes.
So that's something I guess we got to look forward to.
Yeah.
But speaking of things that we have to look forward to, there's a reason why I'm wearing this yellow shirt today.
Okay, let me ask you, why, Eric? Why yellow today? The good thing it's not election season. You're gonna be best.
The reason that I'm wearing this yellow shirt today is to commemorate World Bee Day. Did you know that it was World Bee Day?
No.
How could you not know that it was World Bee Day?
Okay, that's fun. Where did it come from again? U.S.? No? Where?
I never even heard of World Bee Day. But it is. It's World Bee Day, and where we honor the bee. They are crucial for growing many of our favorite and healthy foods and moving pollen from plant to plant, pollinating more than 100 fruits and vegetables around the world, including strawberries, potatoes, and apples.
Okay.
But unfortunately, bee species are under a threat as a result of changes in land use and pesticides and intensive agricultural and, of course, climate change, which is the whole reason I'm bringing up bee.
Oh, okay. Something I learned today,
We're
Eric.
talking about that.
Okay.
It's funny, when I found out that it was World Bee Day, I decided to do a little research into bees. And, bees are the most fascinating insects.
Really?
I have to say. I learned some things about bees that I never knew. Let me tell you a few things about bees and see if you knew anything. Did you know that bees, especially honeybees, will harvest the poop of other animals. They will smear it around the opening of the hive to keep out bee-killing points.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That is fascinating, I think. That bees would figure that out. Like, oh, okay, well, of course, now if you smear poop around any opening, you probably keep people out. Out of your hive. But, they do it to keep those killer hornets out. And back in 1980, there were splotches of yellow found in the jungle in Laos and Cambodia, and many assumed that it was the residue from chemical weapons. Kind of yellow ray there.
Yeah.
And they were saying, well, it causes illness and death. The United States blamed the Soviets. The Soviets said, how could you do that? So I almost went to war. And it turned out later, it was not any kind of agent or anything that the Russians had put on there. It was actually bee poop from large swarms of honeybees. Almost started World War III.
Well, thank you for that, kind of info. I had no idea about that. I know the bee can always bite me anytime.
I see. I never been a big fan of bees.
Me too.
Vulture bees? I didn't even heard of vulture bees. The vulture
No,
bee
what is that?
eats meat.
Oh?
It's a bee that eats meat. Yeah, they.
What kind of meat?
It's dedicated for the flowers. They had 4 dead animal carcasses, and they can keep the animal clean. But their honey, the vulture bees, tastes just as sweet and tasty as regular bees.
Is that where we get our honey, the one that we buy in the market?
No.
No? Okay.
Vulture bees are, yeah.
Okay.
I think we get it from a different kind of bee, especially a special kind of bee. But anyway, so that's our our interesting facts about things that are going on in the world, especially with this change in the. I'm interested to see how this year the typhoon season goes down, not only here in the Philippines, but especially in the United States and around the world.
Oh, yeah.
It's just as bad as they all are scaring us to believe it is.
Well, yeah. Well, typhoon is, I know it's scary, especially places where it gets really flooded really bad, and but what really scared me is, what really I'm scared is earthquake. That's the thing that I was so scared of
I
that.
don't know if climate change is affecting earthquakes, but I'm sure they will find a way to do it. And I think for some reason we are going to yet another commercial. And let's see what happens here.
Welcome, the newest addition to our lineup of explosive anchors. A veteran broadcaster, a sports news anchor, race car driver, columnist, and reporter. Ira Panginiban and his program, Free Spits. Free Spits, a parody of free speech, a right we always abuse. Free Spits, freewheeling discussions, no holds barred. Free Spits, the real sentiments of the Filipino people. Free Spits and Ira Panginiban, Monday to Friday from 5 to 6:30 p.m. on Radio Bandito TV, Channel 224 Sky Cable, TV Plus boxes, GMA Afforda box, and all DTT boxes. Also heard on DZRJ 8:10 a.m. Also seen on Facebook /DZRJ 8:10 a.m. and YouTube channel DZRJ 8:10 a.m. Radio Bandido. Bangon na, tanghali na, RJ na. Sally Masa, with host Sunny Ilustre, digs into current events and human interests. All viewers and listeners are invited to take part in the discussion. All opinions are welcome and respected. Sally Masa is open to assist those experiencing injustice. The motto of the show is, if God is with us, who is against us? Seen every Saturday from 4 to 5 p.m. on Radio Bandito TV, Channel 224 Sky Cable, TV Plus boxes, digital free-to-air channel 29, facebook.com/DZRJ 8:10 a.m. or on YouTube, channel DZRJ 8:10 a.m. Radio Bandido.
DRJ with Eric Lecain and our special guest, 𝗡𝗲𝘄𝘀. Now, are the big stories of the week? You know, one of the big stories that I wanted to talk about this week was the Ukraine. And you know, Lolly, we have not been talking about the Ukraine very much lately. And you know why we haven't been talking about the Ukraine?
Why not?
It's kind of boring.
Yeah, because it started last year and it's been ongoing, and so
It's ongoing, and
Yeah.
it's really bad. And every week, you know, something happens, but it's been the same. You know, Russia goes in, they blow something up, and you know, Ukraine attacks them, and then they attack the Ukraine, and then they do it in cities that we can't pronounce. And so, you know, I have to say that 30 years ago, I probably would have never said that. But, you know, I was watching this show this week, and a guy was saying that good journalism or real news is boring. And these days, I don't know, that's kind of true, I think. When you start looking at the clicks of the AP Newswire and Bloomberg and Reuters versus, you know, YouTube captions such as like, Trump is going to jail, or Putin is dying, or climate change is going to kill us in 20 years, you have a lot more clicks. So you know, I was kind of debating someone last week about this, you know, and they were saying, you know, telling something, well, what's your source? And I'm like, well, the AP Newswire. It's like, well, you know, that's all fake. And I'm like, really? I'm like, when's the last time you ever watched the AP, read the AP Newswire, the Associated Press? So, but anyways, some of it's true. It's you know, that if it's not fake, we're getting bored with it. And sometimes the fake news or the sensationalized stuff, that's what we watch more because it's more not boring. And that's what a lot of, you know, this show that I was watching, that's what they were talking about, and that's what we're discussing. And I have to say, you know, because this week I really want to talk about the Ukraine because we haven't talked about it in a long time. But I mean, I was thinking back, you know what, that's why you didn't talk about it before. It's news. It's big news going on around the world, but, you know, a lot of people have just kind of forgotten about it because there's so many other things that are really not as important that get more airtime.
Well, the problem is, like I said, that war started last year. We started talking about it, and then because it's been ongoing and up to now, you know, it escalated many times. And you know what? Yeah, I feel bored listening and watching about that thing also. But of course, I feel bad also for the people of Ukraine because a lot of people are dying. I mean, they don't deserve it just because of the kind of, I don't know what I should call, I kind of say it in the show, the kind of leader that they have. I mean, wow, my goodness. We should not be like that. We are all human. Why are, I don't understand.
It is amazing. It is amazing. 2023, we're in the middle of a war like this.
Yeah.
And that this week, which was a big week. I mean, there's a lot of news that came out of there. And the fact that Joe Biden, the president of the United States, said, you know what, we're okay with the jet fighters. They're going to let them have jet fighters. And before they didn't want them to have jet fighters before because they were worried that the Ukraine, once they had a jet fighter, they would attack Russia. And then the Russians say, hey, United States, you gave them jet fighters, so now we're going to attack you. So they didn't want to get into this. But now it's come to the point where they're like, all right, you know what, we're going to let them have these F-16 jet fighters. In the meantime, we're going to train you. So the United States is going to train the guys, but they've changed their mind and about giving them Army jets. And now, you know, they don't know where the jets are coming from yet, but it's coming very soon. And Ukraine now is planning for a counteroffensive. Which, in other words, they're going to start attacking Russia soon. You know, usually we just talk about the Russian attacks on Ukraine. Well, now the Ukrainians, they got enough stuff. They got enough of their own military equipment. And now with these jet fighters, they're thinking about going after Russia.
Wow. This will not stop.
Yeah, no. I mean, not going into Russia. The United States was very clear. They said, you know, if we're going to give you these things, you cannot go into Russia and attack Russia. but they're going to attack the strongholds that Russia has in the Ukraine. Because, the United States doesn't want a, WW3 on their hands. But they shot all those missiles into Kiev, and one of the big things was that the United States gave the Ukraine those anti-air Patriot missiles. And remember, Putin said, Patriot missiles, our tech is so good, we can avoid, deter, get around those missiles. Well, they shot 30 missiles into Kiev, and those Patriots shot off, and they shot down 29 out of 30.
Wow.
So, so much for that. But meanwhile, the President Zelensky of the Ukraine has gone to Saudi Arabia. And I thought that was pretty interesting news that Zelensky would go to Saudi Arabia, seeing as who Saudi Arabia is and who's friends with Saudi Arabia, because aren't they kind of friends with Russia? They are, well, put it this way, they are not an enemy of Russia. He went there and gave a very passionate speech, which he does. He's really good at that. I think that's part of the reason why he's got so much support from so many countries, is because he's very good at,
Yeah, he like today.
Gripping speeches that he gives.
During the G summit, President Biden, I think, already gave another $375 million.
Yeah, I mean, he's very good at, because he went from Saudi Arabia, which they were doing the Arab League there, and then he went to Japan right after that, where they're having the G7.
Yeah.
Just so you know, in the Arab League, you know who was there? The president of Syria. Boy, talk
really?
about an awkward moment, because the president of Syria, he waged war on his own people. They had people remember from the show, I think a couple of years ago, we were talking about it, that the president of Syria, he had the violent crackdown on the pro-democracy movement there in Syria, and had a civil war, killed hundreds of thousands of people. And the only reason that guy is still in power and doesn't have a rope around his neck is Vladimir Putin. The Russians came in and were like, okay, all right, we'll help you. They flattened the opposition. So that's kind of weird, I would say. You're in there giving a speech on how we need to stop the Russians, and then there's a guy sitting right next to you who's like, if without the Russians, I'd be dead. In fact, the Wagner group, who came into Syria to help fight the mercenaries that came into Syria to help fight that, they're now fighting in the Ukraine for Russia. Because I know they've been in the news a lot lately. But boy, talk about a weird moment.
Yeah, that's why sometimes, like we were talking about earlier, about getting boring about something, about discussing this kind of thing, because already like, what? Because when you watch television, you see them, attacking buildings and all that. My God, I mean, you don't want to see that. I personally don't want to see that. I mean,
the problem I had with it for a while was, they would show what happened, just this week. This bomb blew up, But if you replace that with the news from the week before, or the news from the week before, the images all start to run together. They all start to look the same, which is why I think a lot of people were like, all right, well, we've sort of seen this already, and there's nothing really new here.
Yeah.
And it's not true. There's actually something new every week. There's a new town being attacked, a new something being taken over, new atrocities. It's just kind of all running together. Which is why, even me, we stopped kind of talking about it for a little while, because it was the same news every week. Now, this week is very different, because Zelensky went to Japan.
Yeah. It's kind of surprise, right?
Yeah, they kept talking a surprise visit to Japan. But I mean, I guess they knew
Of course, definitely.
Was it like a open the door like, hey, it's me, Zelensky. But this week, the G7 met in Hiroshima, Japan. In case you don't know, the G7 is some of the largest economies in the world. They get together. They used to be the G8, and then they got rid of Russia, and they're like, you can't be in this group anymore. But the first thing they did was they paid tribute to the victims of the Hiroshima bomb of World War II. And interesting thing was a lot of protests were going on outside when they were commemorating the victims of the Hiroshima, the 170,000 that were killed by that bombing. And they were saying that the United States should apologize for it, which the United States did not. And the United States is never going to apologize for it because, in their eyes, it's Japan's fault, I think, of why that bomb was dropped in the first place. But that is a whole nother story.
I'm not surprised of that. America will not say sorry.
No, they'll go out and lay wreaths and they'll, commemorate the thing, but they're not going to ever apologize, I think, for that.
Yeah, but, there's some way of apologizing by, in my opinion, is, when you are extending help. Whatever problem, let's say, Japan has, U.S. will, that's one way of like reciprocating for, not reciprocating, but, that is something that you can give back. So,
it is funny, isn't it, that, the Japanese and the United States were bitter enemies. Like, bitter enemies. I mean, literally wanted to kill each other, and now they are the best of friends. It's just funny how things
BFF,
change.
We call it BFF.
I mean, and who knows? I mean, there was a time where Gorbachev and Reagan were, meeting all the time, and they had phone calls, and the Russians were becoming friends of America. Now it's kind of turned the opposite. We can go on and on about, the fact that, Germany used to be an incredible, the worst enemy of the United States, and now they're the best friend.
For me, why not? I think, Eric, it's all about leadership. Because if the U.S. and, Russia before are good friends, like during the time of Gorbachev, but who was the president that time? U.S. president? Reagan. So, for me, it's good because of the leaders. Now it's a different story. It started when?
Do you think the people of Russia are against, against the United States? I mean,
I don't think so.
They are to a point where whoever, the older generation that watches the Russian television that says, the United States is doing all these bad things. But in general, I think most of the population in Russia, just like most of the population in the United States, they don't hate the Russians.
No, because I have some Russian friends that I spoke with from time to time. They don't like what's happening in Russia, and they don't like what their president is doing. So everybody's their opinion. Like even the U.S., even here in the Philippines, like practically everywhere. It's just that I think they should come into the right senses, to stop this war, whatever kind of war it is. Because this is not good for us.
Yeah, I mean, war for what? What are we fighting over? What is, we're going to have a war in Taiwan. We're getting off the subject here, but I mean, it's one of those things like, at this time, at this age, we have the world. We're fighting against the world who's like sending tornadoes and hurricanes and warm water.
Yeah.
we got enough to deal with that.
Yeah.
But in this G7 thing that's going on there, of course, the biggest subject on the table for the G7 was, what can we do to cause Russia more trouble? And
that's why Russia and China is reacting already.
Of course.
They have reaction already to that.
Since the start of the war, the G7 and a lot of the West has called for these crippling sanctions against Russia. The idea to bring down the Russian economy, and to the point where they can no longer fund the war. However, that has not exactly turned out the way that everyone thought that it would. Russia has figured out a way around the sanctions. They're sending oil to India and China. They found loopholes for exporting, things out of Russia. So we kind of knew this might happen anyway. I mean, Russia knew they were prepared for these sanctions, and they blast them with all these sanctions. And Putin's like, go ahead and do it. We'll be fine. And sure enough, they're fine so far. So you know what the G7 is going to do? More sanctions.
Definitely the 7 powerful countries in the world. So
they're gonna blast them with some more of these sanctions.
I think, Eric, you and I should go and talk to these people. Stop this, craziness. Your leadership is creating chaos around the world. Can we just have peace?
You talk to Putin. But
I
anyway,
will.
the U.S. and the EU are pushing for more sanctions against Russia. They are finding these loopholes that Russia has found. The Russian companies that are using to move products from countries that are not part of the sanction group, and they're moving products to those countries, and then those countries are moving them to Russia, and vice versa. So they found all kinds of ways around the things, and so what they're going to sanction things like Russian diamonds, which they say was a $4 billion business in 2021. Nickel, copper, aluminum, all these things that Russia produces. Now they're really going to put the kibosh on this. That if you get caught with some Russian aluminum, you can be in some big trouble. They're going after Russian gold, which I know that's going to sting a little bit. But the funny thing is, when they were saying this, you know what? The UK is saying, we have immobilized 60% of the wealth of Putin in the UK.
Really?
And I'm like, wow, 60%. Okay, what's 60% of what? $100 billion? I mean, how much wealth does Putin have? They have no idea. They think it's somewhere in the 200 billion range. So if they immobilize 60%, well, he's still got a lot.
A lot, yeah. Remember, was it last year when we talked about that Putin is the richest man in the world?
They believe that he is the richest man. Even, we can't prove it, not on paper. But, I mean, he took over all the oil companies, put all the oil executives that he didn't like in jail, or they disappeared. I don't know. And Putin took over all that. So he has that much wealth at his fingertips. So it's kind of hard to tell, because they keep saying, how could you were a KGB agent making $70,000 a year. How are you worth $200 billion now?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Russia had its own sanctions that it is running itself. They have banned 500 people from coming to Russia, including Barack Obama, CNN host Aaron Burnett, and, of course, my favorite person, Stephen Colbert. So I don't think any of these people were interested in going to Russia.
Exactly. Aaron Burnett herself? I don't think so.
I don't think Aaron was going to Russia.
She's a tough lady. I mean, I don't think she will not even do,
Every once in a while, Russia has to do these, oh, well, we're not going to let that person in the country. And they're like, yeah, right, okay, all right. But the other interesting thing that happened in the G7, Lolly, was the other elephant in the room, and that being China. They issued a statement from the G7 warning other countries in the Pacific about dealing with China, countries that are currently being wooed by China and then later bullied by them to enter into deals that do not benefit them but rather benefit China. So, they have called on China to abide by the international rules. Good luck with that. Countries in the G7 had vowed to stop their own dependencies on trade with China.
Yeah, it sounds like Philippines is, because we are part of that.
Yes, we are. But the interesting thing about it, I mean, if you look back, South Korea had they put up that missile defense system, and so China sanctioned them. And then Lithuania started. They got an embassy there, a Taiwanese embassy in Lithuania. So China, stopped all exports coming out, imports going into Lithuania. So they're calling it the weaponization of economic vulnerabilities. Is what China is doing, and the G7 plans to do something called de-risking, much like decoupling, which is the same plan they have in the United States, where they are working on a plan to work with emerging economies to how to deal with the China coercion, planning together with the United States on banning exports of chips and chip technology to China and crack down on inappropriate transfers of tech to China.
Well, but for sure, China are hiring Americans to do those things.
You know
We know that.
There's all kinds of things going on. But,
Yes.
But
Money talks, Eric.
yes, I know. I mean, hey, China, not that I would go to work for China, but, speaking of interesting things that are going on around the world that are related to Russia and China, I know last week on the show we were talking about the people of Turkey that were electing a new president. And Erdogan, and he's the current president, the pro-Russian, quasi-authoritarian, presidents, up against 𝗡𝗲𝘄𝘀, who believes that Turkey should fall in line with the West again, and that they should rebuild that alliance with NATO again. And the winner, because the election was last Sunday, and the winner is, we don't know.
We don't know yet?
Yeah, the election was too close to call. Nobody got the majority of the votes, so they are going into a runoff. Currently, there's, of course, pressure on Turkey right now because they want them, Turkey, Erdogan is pretty much pro-Putin, and they really want putting the pressure on Turkey to back these new sanctions. But Erdogan is like, it's not in the best interest of Turkey to do that. So a lot of people are sitting on their hands right now waiting to see if he wins again. Because he says, Turkey wants to keep its strong relationship with Russia. And a lot of people his rival has the opposite, of course. He wants to, repair these years of strained diplomacy that has happened between Turkey and the West, and that right now, we were talking about it before. Sweden wants to become part of NATO, and NATO wants Sweden to become part of them too. And Turkey is the only one blocking it. If Turkey would just get out of the way, then Sweden, like Finland, could become a part of NATO. And the problem with Finland was they had no reason. But with Sweden, they're saying, well, there are terrorists in Sweden that are against the Turkey. They're using something in order to stop this from happening. And a lot of people want to see this. They want to see NATO grow and become more a cohesive factor against Russia, which was the whole purpose of them anyway, of having NATO anyway. So this is going to be a very interesting election on how this. Now, of course, they've already said that there's all kinds of cheating going on, and when you might not win, that's the first thing you say. But that's that's the new norm now. We started that in the United States.
Yeah, if you did not win, you were cheated. So
it's true, Lolly. I mean, this is happening a lot around the world, I have to say, and I'll get your comment on this. Democracies right now, there's usually one guy who's pro-democracy and one guy who's not. And I see that now more and more. More of these authoritarian type leaders that are emerging, like Putin and President Xi of China, who are saying that we're doing it better. That Erdogan and all these guys are saying, listen, this is the way to do it. You can't pick your leader. You need to let us pick him for you. You need to do what we tell you to do. I mean, look at places like the United States where democracy doesn't work
anymore.
They're looking at the United States now, which is on the verge of a financial meltdown, and saying, hey, look at these guys. I mean, they can't agree on anything because they have a democracy. Here, there is no democracy. We make the decisions and you just go with it. We're not going to have these financial crises because, we make the decisions. Now, of course, Turkey has been in the middle of a massive financial crisis over there, but I just find it interesting, right now, I don't know if you've been watching it, but the United States is going through a democracy issue where,
it all started last election. I did not see, I know I mentioned this before that I always look up to America. Every time there's election, the one thing that I admired, like I said, is what's his name, Lecain before.
He was
one
a
of
good
the
guy.
best guy,
He was
yeah.
one of the last good, solid Republican, like
Yes.
true Republican leaders before. And look what has happened to the Republican Party now.
Yeah, I know, it's a mess. But anyway, the reason I look up to this guy because not only him, but some other, presidential candidate before, the moment they lose an election, they concede right away.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, that's the thing we should do. If you lose an election, just concede and say, okay, thank you very much for voting me, blah, blah, and all that. Then maybe next time you can try again. But the problem, last election, it became like, wow, what happened to America?
There is no way I lost. How could I have gotten beaten by that guy? It's not possible.
Yeah, that's the thing, because there's a personality problem with that guy. And we know that is your favorite guy,
Yes, well,
Eric.
we're trying to do a whole show without saying his name. But the previous president of the United States.
Yeah.
Which is part of the problem. It's right now the United States has what they call a debt ceiling issue that they're fighting over.
Yeah. Eric, for Filipino watcher viewers, okay, can you explain in a very, kind of short but very clear, what is that debt ceiling thing that you have now in America for our own understanding?
All right, so the United States, they make debt. They buy stuff. They buy stuff. Then they got to pay for it. And how do they pay for it? Taxes.
Yes.
Taxes, and they have other things that they do. They sell weapons and other things. But mostly it's taxes. And so a lot of times over the last, 100 years, the United States has budgets and they spend more than they have taxes for. The debt's going to go up. We're going to need another this amount, or we're going to need a little bit more. And so this time they needed a little bit more. But the problem is that the Republicans are now in power in Congress. And the Republicans are not like the Republicans before. These are called the MAGA Republicans or the Trump Republicans. And they're more interested in bringing down the United States than building it up because their guy is not the president. So what happened was when Trump was in president, he made these massive tax cuts for the rich.
Okay.
So when it came time to pay the bills, oh shoot, we don't have enough money because we had these massive tax cuts for the rich. So they're like, well, just raise the debt ceiling.
Okay.
Everybody does it. Trump did it twice. Freaking Reagan did it like 17 times. I don't know. Every president does it. Barack Obama did. So the Republicans are like, we're not going to do it unless you cut these programs. Well, what programs? Well, the programs that are for the poor. And so Biden's like, well, these are our signature programs. We're not going to cut these. And they're like, well, why don't we just raise the taxes for the rich like we had before? The Republicans are like, we're not doing that. So now they're in an impasse. And nobody can agree on anything. And right now, by June 1st, the United States needs to pay its bills. And so, there's this issue of possibly using this, weird law that's never been used before from the ways that the Constitution was written, where they can supersede the Congress and pay the bill anyway. But that could cause all kinds of problems. What people don't understand is if the United States defaults on its debt, which you know how many times the United States has defaulted on its debt ever?
No.
0.
Really?
Never. They have never defaulted on its debt. Because if they do, it would be a firestorm of problems across the world financially. The dollar would drop. Places like the Philippines that use U.S. dollars in their reserves, they would all kinds of problems. So probably the stock markets would just go crazy all over the world. So they don't want this to happen. So right now the Republicans are holding the U.S. government hostage. If that explains it. Yeah,
well, it's pretty understandable. But then my question there is that why do they just both parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, why don't they just come together and solve the problem for the good of their people?
But a lot of them do. A lot of them want that. The problem is these what they call MAGA Republicans. They wouldn't let this guy, the Speaker of the House, they wouldn't even elect him unless they got, okay, well, we'll elect you, but when it comes time, we want these cuts across the board, and these cuts are for things like veterans health care, student loan forgiveness, cancer research, education, jobs, the new IRS group that was supposed to go after the rich people who were cheating on their taxes, all these kind of things. The federal, cash that was given out during COVID. These, they're saying, well, if you're poor and we give you, all this help, whatever, you have to work. You have to do some work. And people go, wait a minute, you gave millions and millions and millions of dollars to these rich companies for what? For nothing? And wait a minute, do they need to work? We need to, do they have to, work in a soup kitchen on the weekends? So, this is where they will never agree. They're not going to agree. And it's getting close to that day. And here's what I think. I think that some of these Republicans, these Trump Republicans, not all Republicans are like this. A lot of them want to fix it. So. They're going to work it out. But some of these Republicans, they just want to see the Biden administration fail. They want to see the world burn. Yeah,
that is so, what do you call it? I forgot the word that I should use. I mean, for me, that's unacceptable. Why you guys, the politician, you should work for the people, not for yourself, not for your own glory, whatever, because, you are elected. The reason why they put you in power for you to do something for the people.
Yeah, that's not really the way things are now. Right now, it's all about getting in there and speaking out and getting your, 2 minutes on YouTube, your YouTube clip that you can put on, and then you'll get a bunch of views. That's sort of what it's become. They'll come, I've seen some just embarrassing, moments in Congress, things that we would never, ever see in the past. These just ridiculous, embarrassing moments that come on in Congress now. And that it's just so, I can get that clip. And then that clip is going to get how many views? It's all about being famous and getting yourself on the news shows and so forth. And unfortunately, that's what it's become. And that's not what it should be, but that's what it is.
Now I would say, Eric, that there's already, the social media, all this technology become everybody wants to make money by using this platform. So even the politician, they're using it. That's what you're saying, because this is what is happening right now.
It's fundraising. Yeah. When they come out and they
go,
the personal, we're going to stop the debt, from them raising the debt ceiling, and then the whole United States will crash and burn. And it's like people are like, okay, we'll just donate money to you because you're going to hurt the Biden administration. It's like,
my goodness,
you're hurting yourself. You're hurting yourself.
Yeah,
and I feel bad because. Biden came in, and one thing he was going to do was he was going to overturn the tax cuts of Donald Trump for the rich, and make the rich have to pay their fair share, which would solve all these problems. And the Republicans, which are very surprising, a lot of them, they will not budge on that. And there's like, well, nope, you got to cut these programs that help poor people. And that's how we'll get the money. And the Democrats are like, well, we're not doing that. And right now, if this happens, if they do not raise the debt ceiling and the United States defaults on its loans, the first thing you will see the very next day, the stock market will drop.
That is oh my goodness, I don't want that to happen.
The power of the dollar will shrink. And when the power of the dollar shrink, then all the currencies will go into chaos. And you know who will be there to clean it all up?
Who?
China.
China
guys, can't wait for this to happen.
Yeah, if you are watching, you guys, you better, come to your senses and don't give China the chance if you really want to be,
right now the currency of choice being traded in Russia now is the Chinese yuan. And I know that they want that to happen in more and more countries.
Oh, my God.
Okay, I understand that. I'm not saying that's wrong. That's China. Because they want to be able to control the currency like the U.S. kind of does now. So, speaking of train wrecks that are the U.S. government, one thing that was almost a train wreck this week was Meghan and Harry. We're jumping subjects here because we're about to run out of time, but. Meghan, she was being honored in New York at the Miss Foundation Women's Vision Awards. And what happened was they got themselves in the news because there was a car chase between them and a group of photographers. Now, when I first heard of this, I saw a meme on Facebook in which Harry and Meghan were chasing the photographers, trying to get them to take their picture. However, it turns out the photographers got away from them and they weren't able to. Okay, that's not what happened. It actually is the other way around. The photographers were chasing Harry and Meghan. But the royal couple said it lasted 2 hours.
Wow.
This chase. But they were now. Okay, let's think about this for a second. They're chasing them through the streets of New York.
How?
That's
I've seen
pretty
the street
pretty
in
tough
New York.
to chase somebody through the streets of New York. You know, they say they almost crashed, or they almost hit pedestrians, and that supposedly they came close to hitting 2 New York police officers. You know, there's multiple different versions of the story being passed around, that they were flying through the streets of New York and dozens of cars were chasing them. All right, so supposedly they stopped and switched cars several times. Jumped out of one car, jumped into another car, took off in that car, then they chased them in that car. And supposedly they went from 23rd Street up to 96th Street before returning to the police station on 67th Street, which I'm taking a lot of this with a grain of salt because I'm from New York.
Yeah, that's why I want to ask you about it.
Anybody that can chase somebody from 23rd to 96th Street, all right.
Maybe they were running.
Yeah, I was going to say if they're on foot. But then they supposedly left the police station and jumped in a taxi, and they went around the block. And they chased them around the block, and they got out and went back in the police station. So, you know, and then they waited until midnight before they made a break for it. And they eventually got away clean because supposedly they didn't want the photographers to know where they were staying. So they could come and go as they wanted, as they pleased in New York, and there wouldn't be somebody standing out in front of their place, you know, waiting for them every time they came out of the building.
Well, you know, when I saw it, of course, the social media, I was like, what? I hope, you know, what happened to Princess Diana will not happen to, you know, because the first thing that came into my mind.
Yes, that's the first thing that came into my mind. It's like, oh my God, this is just like Princess Diana, which it wasn't.
Yeah.
This was not the same type situation.
Yeah, but
as that.
Yeah, but you know how it is when you're reading different sources, so you don't know.
That's the
which
first thing you think of because, of course, you know, Diane, who was probably one of the most revered royals ever.
Yeah.
And that was a high-speed chase at like 90 miles an hour, and they, you know, the paparazzi were truly chasing them. You know, here with the Harry and Meghan, you take a lot of it with a grain of salt because you know, they are not being chased as much as their mother was. Their mother was being hounded day in, day out, all the time. So you know, this is kind of a bit of a different story. But you know, they asked the royals in England to comment, and they were like, no comment.
Yeah, because I think they still have to wait for the investigation if this is true or not, because there's so many stories around. I mean, so we don't know which one is the true. So now I was like, oh my goodness, so there's another story here and there. I mean, okay, forget about it.
And the mayor of New York made a statement, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was sort of like, gee whiz, come on, royal family, chill out. You know, who can chase anybody through the streets of New York in a car with, you know, a dozen cars chasing you?
Yeah, I know.
So, you know, but here's the thing. Harry and Meghan demanded the photography company return the pictures that they took. And the statement that they gave from the photography company was just golden. It said, in America, I'm sure you know, property belongs to the owner of it. Third parties cannot just demand it to be given to them as perhaps kings do. And then speaking to the lawyers, perhaps you should sit your client down and advise them that his English rules of royal prerogative to demand what the citizens hand over their property to the crown were rejected in this country long ago. I stand by the founding fathers of the U.S. So, you know, kind of a funny a rebuttal there from the photography company. But, yeah, they demanded that all the pictures that were taken as they were trying to get away from them be returned to Meghan. And the photography company was like, you must be joking. You're in the United States, buddy.
You're
That doesn't
not-
fly here.
Yeah. Well, whatever.
I
That's
know,
all I can say.
It's kind of like, all right, okay. You know, right now, the royal family is kind of, I don't want to say they're a joke, but they're kind of funny sometimes. So we'll see, you know, how long that they last as being the royal family. Although Harry and Meghan are not so much the royal family.
Yeah.
But they have moved on, as we must move on. Lali Tolentino,
Yeah.
because we are out of time here on the World News Jam on DZRJ and RJTV. But we will be back next week with more interesting stories. I think the stories this week were quite interesting. We had a very good conversation this week. So for me, Eric Lecain, and Lali Tolentino here on the World News Jam on DZRJ, we will be back again. Everybody, please be safe out there, and we will see you then.